We're going to look at the system settings and repeat signage and the various options in there. So I'm going to click on File and Settings, and we've got a vast array of tabs along the top. So what we're just going to do is really quickly just flip through those. So the first tab is Paths, and that just shows you where the default data files are, audio files, etc. One thing you will notice is that if different users are using this computer and you're logging in with different usernames, each user's data directory will be different. However, these audio files, PDF files, etc. are under the public folder, and that's where we install our samples when you first install repeat signage. There's a Restore Defaults button if you want to go back to where you were. Next tab is Defaults. Now this is just the default website address if you're using the web browser control in repeat signage. So if you're in the designer and you insert a web browser, then that will default to that particular website address, and you might want to change that to obviously your own website. This is also the default RSS feed, which just shows you the news from the repeat signage website for when you're using the Flash RSS feed. Just a quick mention, you've also got this press F1 for help at the bottom of each of the pages. Now that's context sensitive, which basically means that you're going to get a different help page for each tab on there. So that's the default tab. If we just went back to the Paths tab, then you'll see a completely different file again. Right, next tab along is Windows Startup. Now what you can do is if this box is ticked here, then when this computer first starts up, it will automatically launch a repeat signage presentation or playlist for you, and you'd put a tick in the box, click on Add, and you'd add a particular presentation. I've already got one set to here, which is a playlist, and that's going to go on screen 1. Now the reason there's a number of different screen numbers is if you're using the Repeat Signage Professional Edition and you can have 4 screens attached to your computer, you could actually have a different presentation playing on each screen, and that's designed for sort of video wall use. Again, there is a help page for that, which gives you a lot more options. Next tab is Passwords. Now you can set an administration password on repeat signage so that none of these default settings can be changed, and a player close password, which can be useful in some circumstances. The admin password is more for sort of protecting things like if you've added an FTP site to the main screen and you don't want other users to be able to go and change those details, then you can actually use an admin password on this for here. And again, if you use F1, it gives you a bit more information on that. Okay, the next tab is the Player tab. Now this is quite an interesting one because it controls how repeat signage actually plays the presentations, and you usually need to configure this on the machine you're actually going live with, playing your presentations on, such as say a machine in a reception area. First option, keep player on top of other applications. What that means is when repeat signage plays, it keeps itself right at the front of the computer. You don't see the Windows Start bar like this one, and it just means that if there's any pop-ups from any other software, then they get put in the background because repeat signage stays on the top, which is exactly what you need when you're dealing with digital signage software. Other options are remove Windows Start bar, not recommended. That was just for some old that's sort of left over from when we were using Windows XP, and occasionally the start bar appeared, so that was just an option we could actually do to sort of like get around that particular issue. Disable Internet Explorer browser refresh noise. Repeat signage uses Microsoft Internet Explorer in the background to display website pages, and if you change to a different page you will always get like a clicking noise, and this option just makes a registry change to disable that when you're playing with repeat signage, so you always want that one ticked. Next option, monitor playing presentations playlists and refresh if changed. If you have a repeat signage presentation and it's on a network drive such as N, and you're playing it from say the machine in the reception area, what you can do is you can set up that machine in the reception area to check for a new version of that presentation, say every minute or every hour, etc. And what that means is somebody can actually edit it from another computer on the network, and then when they save their changes, then repeat signage player will look at that file, notice the file date has changed, and automatically play the new version for you automatically. So that's quite a useful feature for on the player. There's another option here, timed refresh of playing presentations. Now what you could do is you could get repeat signage to automatically refresh itself every hour. So for instance, if the presentation is on a network drive and you're playing, say, like a playlist of pictures from a particular folder, and then every hour you wanted to do a complete refresh so that in case the pictures have changed, then you can actually use this option. There's another option here that is quite useful, and it's normally ticked. Daily full refresh for 24/7 displays. Now, on some places, for example, in petrol stations or shopping malls, you might have a presentation playing on a screen. It might be playing constantly, 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Now, over time, it could be a case that if you've got a lot of content in your presentation, it could be a case that your memory usage might sort of like spike after 5 or 6 days. So what you can do is you can actually do a daily full refresh at, say, midnight, just to keep the memory usage down slightly. Right, high presentation loading bar. When you play a repeat signage presentation, down the bottom it will say loading repeat signage. You can actually click on this option to actually get rid of that, so you don't actually see that message. Next option, automatically restart if error encountered. Now, we don't have that tick by default. That's a case of occasionally, because of the way that you can design repeat signage presentations, and every single presentation is going to be different, and on some presentations you might have like 20 different controls on the screen. And because of the flexibility of repeat signage, occasionally a customer will have problems where they'll get a crash, maybe because something too much is running, etc. And if that's the case, you could use this button to automatically restart if that happened, while our support department looks into what the issue is. This option here, when you play a repeat signage presentation, you'll see a black screen. Now, what you might want to do is to actually put, say, like a corporate logo on there instead. So you can actually use this to play a background image by clicking on this box and then browsing, or you could just change the background colour to, say, white if you preferred that rather than the black instead. So again, if you use F1, you'll be able to see all the different options there, and there's full information on that. Right, the next tab is touch. Now, this is used when you're playing a touchscreen presentation. Now, with a touchscreen presentation, when you play it, now the computer may have a mouse attached, or it could actually be a touchscreen computer. And the difference really is, if you've got a touchscreen computer, you don't want to see a mouse cursor at all. So by default, that will be taken off. But let's say you don't have a touchscreen, but you still wanted to use this facility. You could make a mouse available to users along with a normal screen, but then you've got the option to actually show the mouse cursor as well. Again, F1, that gives you more information. This is quite useful as well. When you're playing a touchscreen presentation, by default, when you want to close it, you need to go to the keyboard and you type in close me. And when you play the presentation, it will actually give you a reminder of that message as well. But you can actually change the password here if required. Next tab, repeat server account. If you're linking repeat signage to our free repeatserver.com service, then what you do is you stick in your email address and password here, and there's also a test button. And if we click on this link here, that will just take you to repeat server, so you can have a look at that site. But then what that does is it makes all the files that you've got hosted on there, such as pictures and RSS feeds, etc., available to repeat signage. So this is how you actually link your repeat server account to repeat signage. Next folder, default refresh. When you are using the designer and you insert, say, a picture control, you can automatically get that control to check for a new version of the picture on the network every 5 minutes if required, and this just sets up what the default would be. Next tab, local variable. Right, I'll give you an example of the use of local variables. Let's say you had a company and you had shops in Edinburgh and London and, say, Paris and New York, and you wanted to display the same presentation in all of those locations, but you wanted to have to say like New York branch or Edinburgh branch or London branch written on the bottom of the screen. Now you can use your text control to actually put in that text, but if you type in stuff like this variable name, so like var company or var location, etc., it will replace that with whatever value is in this particular box. So on our London screen, we would type in London on this particular box, and then it would display London, and then on the machine in New York you'd have New York written there. So that's an example of what local variables are, and if I press the F1 key, it will give you a full breakdown of what you can do on there. So on to the next tab, proxy. Now on some large corporate networks they use things called proxy servers, which are basically a gateway to the internet, and on some servers you have to actually configure your proxy server settings. So if you tick on this box and you stick in these details, but your IT manager will be able to give you those if necessary. In most cases we take the settings directly from Internet Explorer, so as long as you can use your web browser okay on the network, then you shouldn't need to actually change these at all. There's also actually an internet connection testing screen off the main help menu, just in case you've had any problems with this at all. The next tab is the system tab. And I would advise you not to touch any of these at all. If you just press F1, it gives you a bit of information about what that does, but in most cases you never actually need to use this. This was something that we put in place for our old video control, but we're now advising all our customers to use the flash video control instead, which is a lot more better on memory usage and processor usage. And then our final tab is a general tab. Now you can set the system to automatically check for updates once in a while, and would advise you to only do that on, say, a designer screen. There's also a box for a beta tester password. That's where we work with some of our customers and we put in a brand new feature or a new control, and we give them a password so that it just activates on that particular machine until we get it right, and then we put the thing live. There's also an installer password, which is used by some of our installers. And we've got these two options here, enable logging and enable error logging. Now by default the error logging is ticked, so that if you're playing repeat signage and there was happen to be a crash, then in this particular folder it gives information on error logs, etc. And what you can also do is, if you contact repeat signage support and you're having problems with a particular presentation, again, because of the flexibility of repeat signage, you could have like 50 different controls of different types, like videos and stuff playing all over the place, and you might be getting stuff like memory issues, stuff like that, and we might just advise you to take off some of those controls and redesign your presentation slightly. But if you use the enable logging option, what it does is it creates a log file of everything that happens with repeat signage, which is quite a lot of information, and it just gives our support people an idea of where an issue might be occurring, and saves information like memory usage, process usage, etc. And then you can obviously email that over to our support department. Well, that's just a quick overview of the system settings in repeat signage.